This episode is proudly sponsored by The Helix, a new innovation district located in New Brunswick, New Jersey, the heart of the Northeast Corridor. The Helix provides a critical ecosystem for innovation by offering a range of physical environments, a vibrant community of leading innovators, and a strategic central location on the Northeast Corridor. The Helix will uniquely mix workspaces, classrooms, laboratories, venues, and collaborative environments, creating a dynamic community and setting for innovative minds. Universities, startups, Fortune 500 companies, entrepreneurs, researchers, and many others will all call the Helix home. Thus far, the Helix has assembled a community of innovative private and public organizations, such as Rutgers Health, the New Jersey Innovation Hub, RWJ Barnabas Health, Hackensack Meridian Health, universities from Ireland and Israel, and others. The Helix is where ideas will come to life. To learn more, visit helixnj.com.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your hosts Steve Politi and Rutgers insiders Brian Fonseca and Pat Lenny. Let's start shopping.
Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant, an emergency edition of the podcast. It's just me and Fonseca. All right, so we were having this conversation about the quarterbacks just 48 short hours ago, I think, on this show, Brian. I made the comment that I thought Greg Schiano knew who the starting quarterback was. So I get 1 point for that. I also thought he was going to milk it for all it's worth for the rest of the season before letting anybody else know. I was certainly wrong about that. A little surprised to get this news today that that Gavin Wimsatt's out. They're not just taking on a backup role, but in the transfer portal. May 1st and the quarterback competition's over. I mean, what was your first reaction when you saw this?
Yeah, I mean, I was stunned, obviously, when the news came out. The timing, right? I think we all kind of saw and read the tea leaves that Athan Kaliakmanis was ahead of Gavin Wimsatt. I think we all kind of expressed that after our spring game recap. I was surprised, like you were, that the decision was made this early. I thought Greg Schiano, like almost every other college coach, I imagine, would have kind of strung guys along beyond Tuesday when the transfer portal closed to protect the depth in the quarterback room, which he called less than 24 hours ago, the best quarterback depth he's had since he's been at Rutgers.
Great point.
So what I would say is this reflects good on Schiano in the sense that he lives up to what he expects out of his players. He expects them to be upfront and honest and live up to these, forget about me, I love you values. And he did that to Gavin. They had a meeting Tuesday night. I believe it was a standard exit meeting at the end of spring, and expressed to him that Athan Kaliakmanis was going to be the starter, which gave Gavin a few hours before the portal closed Tuesday night at midnight to enter his name into the portal if he wanted and pursue other opportunities rather than being a backup. Gavin decided to do that, and I think from where I sit, probably the best decision for him, because I'm sure someone will take a chance on him as a former four-star guy, really athletic, and will ignore the issues with completing passes and all that. So I think the Rutgers quarterback position being resolved now kind of gives Athan a chance to spend the entire offseason knowing he's the guy, which is always, there's some value in that. So I guess what I would say is I'm surprised things happened this early. I'm not surprised with the result. I thought Athan was the better quarterback all spring from what I had seen. So this is kind of just the right decision, I would say.
Yeah, two points of clarification on the portal, because it's come up a couple of times. He had to enter the portal by today. He doesn't have to have where he's landing by today. I think people didn't understand that much time to make a decision. And that's one. Number two, he could still come back. I don't think that's a likely scenario, but I don't get the sense that the door is shut on anybody really, but in this case of a guy that they've had in the program for 3 years, who they genuinely like, who they've spent a lot of time developing. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clear he's leaving, but just keep those two things in mind about the portal. The other part about this is, and I guess I'm going to sound like the angry man at the bagel shop, the old man. I'm getting there, but it's like, come on, man. Does anybody ever want to compete anymore for a job? Like, I mean, I get it. So they brought in another quarterback. He looks like he's got the leg up on you. Greg Schiano's honest with you and says, that right now he's the starter. Does anybody say, all right, I got a little summer to prove you wrong? No, that doesn't happen anymore in college sports. It's a little frustrating. I think if you're a fan, you'd love to have a guy wired to say, yeah, I don't agree with you, coach. I'm going to go out and win this thing. But here we are. There's my rant. There's my old man rant. Get off my lawn while you're at it.
No, I think it's a totally fair point. I think the opposite would say that I wasn't in the meeting with Greg Schiano. I don't know exactly what he said to Gavin Wimsatt and what was expressed. But if the distinction between him and Athan was very obvious and the gap just seemed too large to overcome, I could understand not raising the white flag, but being realistic, right? There is a thing about being realistic. And as for every comeback story of I'm going to compete, I'm going to win this job, and they end up winning the job, there are many other stories of guys trying to win the job. And, what you saw in the spring ends up happening in training camp, and he stays the backup.
Right.
The guy wants to play, and I don't blame him because you get 4 years to play. I'm not sure where. I think the big question is where he might end up because I'm not sure what his level is at. I think
it's not this level.
Yes.
I mean, he's not going to get a job. Let me clarify this. He's not going to be given a job. Like someone might say to him, "Oh, you can come in here. You'll certainly have a chance to win it." He might get that song and dance, but he's not going to have a job at a program at this level, a Power 5 program. No chance.
I agree. I would be very difficult to find a spot in the Power 5 that he would land where he would have the job sight unseen. I think the best case scenario, if he wants to play, is to drop down a level and play in the MAC or play in a Kentucky school at a lower level. I certainly think that's a place where he can come in and win the job. It's just being realistic, right? Like, I think he realized that Athan was ahead of him, and I think this kind of just works out for everybody. And I do want to clarify on the portal thing you mentioned. Yes. So just for everyone to understand, and this is true for basketball too, because it closes midnight tonight. Wednesday the 1st is the end of the basketball transfer portal. The deadline is only so that you have to enter the paperwork to enter your name by midnight tonight. Gavin presumably did that last night. That's why he's not in the portal yet. But the compliance departments have, I believe, 48 hours between when you file the paperwork to officially put you in the portal. So Gavin might not pop into the portal until tomorrow, but he has initiated the process. He will be going to the portal. Yes, he could come back. You can always come back, but once you enter the portal, you're at the mercy of the program you left to want to accept you. They no longer are obligated to honor your scholarship. I think, to your point, if he decided to come back, Rutgers would take him because he's their best option right now for a backup quarterback. They're not going to find a Gavin equivalent in the portal now. At this point in the offseason, the pickings are very slim at this point.
Right. Yeah, I tweeted this and people lost their mind as they often do on Twitter. But yeah, to the point about being a backup quarterback, I think now if you look at this, that is a concerning situation. Like if they are Athan sprains his ankle on August 29th, I think they're looking at a true freshman starting games for this team. And I get it. AJ Surace is not number 2 on the depth chart for this program. I'm just giving you an informed opinion, right? That he is held up in a higher esteem than a Johnny Shepard, who was a project when he brought him in, who doesn't really have a lot of experience himself. I just think that if something happened here to the starting quarterback, to Athan before as the season, maybe they turn to Johnny Shepard. I just would be surprised if they didn't burn the red shirt on AJ Surace. I think they'd have to. I mean, they do think that kid is a pro. From everything I understand, he's got a bit as big an upside ceiling as any quarterback that they feel like they've had. So take that for what it's worth. This is really where, and the last thing you want is to have a true freshman quarterback starting for you in the Big Ten, no matter how talented he is. And that's how close Rutgers is to facing that situation.
Yes, I think the ideal scenario is that question does not even come up. I think Rutgers was in a spot where they would have their best quarterback depth, as Greg Schiano said, in a long time. I can't remember the last time they had a reliable backup quarterback where you felt good if he had to step up into action. I can't say the same for Johnny Shepard and AJ Surace because they're both young and they're both unproven. I think if it were to come to that, I don't know if there is a very clear answer. I agree with you totally. I think they have very high expectations for AJ Surace's upside. I'm not quite sure he is at the point yet where he can become a guy who can step in and play in the Big Ten. Physically, he's not there yet. Again, this is a true freshman that enrolled early 3 months ago. It's not to be expected for him to be there physically yet. But I think the difference between him and even a Johnny Shepard is pretty notable when you see them standing next to each other on the sideline. And a Johnny Shepard showed some good signs in the spring game, sure, but it's the spring game. The only real action we have of him is, I believe, one series against Wagner where he looked
Right.
fine, but it was the fourth quarter of a blowout against Wagner. So not much to take there. I just think if you're Rutgers, you have to hope desperately that you don't get to that point because, again, I think when you had Athan Kaliakmanis and Gavin, you can absorb the shock of an injury. I think even that was kind of the case last year with Gavin Wimsatt and Evan Simon, who there was a clear bump down, but I think Evan Simon was competent enough to kind of carry you through and not completely derail the season. I think if Athan Kaliakmanis gets hurt and you have to depend on those two young guys, the expectations for the season drop dramatically. So
Agreed.
The margin for error here is really, really thin. You got to hope he holds up for all 12 games, which to Gavin Wimsatt's credit, he held up all 13 games last year. And
Sure.
that
Down to a bowl game, won 7 games. Absolutely. Yeah. Most successful quarterback in a long time. Yeah, you have to look at the positives. That's absolutely true. So you got to keep that in mind. All right, from the big picture program standpoint, 2 things I want to say. Like you can look at this, depends if you're a glass half full, half empty kind of guy. The glass half full standpoint is give Greg Schiano credit for this. Like we knew anybody watching that team late last year knew that he had to upgrade on quarterbacks. And to go into a year with the same situation, expecting Gavin Wimsatt to improve and to suddenly the light bulb to go on would have been would have been wrongheaded. And he knew it. He went out and he knew that doing this, he knew by bringing in a guy with a track record like this, that it was extremely possible. This was certainly a likely scenario that Gavin Wimsatt would leave. Like that was the risk he took. We knew that when they brought him in, he was willing to make that risk because he felt he had to upgrade the program. So glass half full, he did the right thing. Glass half empty. I mean, holy crap! Here we just how many quarterbacks have they thought was the guy that they couldn't develop? Like, why didn't this guy get better? Like, why are we looking at another failed another 4-star quarterback? All the arm talent, all the expectations that he was going to be finally solve that problem. All right. Well, he came here. He had 3 different offensive coordinators. He never had a decent wide receiver to throw to. All these different systems, all this stuff swimming in his head. I mean, I'm sorry. This is not just on Gavin Wimsatt. This is a failure of Rutgers to develop him too. I mean, you can't overlook that.
Experience the Heldridge Hotel, a luxury hotel that's perfect for both the business and leisure traveler. Ideally located within minutes of Rutgers University, the Heldridge is convenient to all the action and activities at SHI Stadium, Jersey Mike's Arena, and the Rutgers University campus. The moment you walk through the doors of the Heldridge Hotel and Conference Center, you know you're someplace different. A place with an independent spirit and a boutique vibe. A place where you can immerse yourself in your meeting or event as easily as you can the local culture. Located in the heart of the city, the Heldridge lets you experience all that New Brunswick has to offer. Whether you're coming to New Brunswick for a fun weekend with friends, in town for a Scarlet Knights game, or attending a business meeting, book your accommodations today at theheldridge.com.
Yes, and that's been the case for years. As Pat wrote last summer, like Rutgers has not had a quarterback since Gary Nova, probably. And even before that, they've never had a bona fide quarterback, except for maybe Tom Savage, which was a whole other situation. And you thought that with Gavin Wimsatt's very high rating, he was the second highest ranked quarterback they've gotten after Savage, that he could live up to that. I think some of that falls on the recruiting industrial complex, which probably overrated him a bit because of his arm strength. I mean, his arm strength compared to even Kaliakmanis, very clear in the spring game. He has a great arm. The issue is just the accuracy he does with that arm is just not there. And
the processing and the offense and the ability to read defense quickly, to make split-second decisions. That was part of the problem too. Absolutely.
Sure. But I think it all stems from accuracy. Like, I think the most basic thing a quarterback can do is throw an accurate ball out of the slant or out of a bubble screen. And as we saw even in the spring game, he still can't do that. And I'm not sure which offensive coordinator, even if he had one for 3 years in the same system, if they can't fix that fundamental problem, I don't know if he would ever be successful. So some of this does absolutely lie on Rutgers. Even from a scouting perspective, I know it was Sean Gleason that was the one that did this and was enamored with Gavin Wimsatt. But from a scouting perspective, from a coaching perspective, yes, Gavin Wimsatt was the latest in a long line of quarterbacks who just did not pan out at Rutgers. I don't think Athan Kaliakmanis has the ceiling of Gavin, so I don't expect him to become the next Gary Nova necessarily, but I think he has a chance to be their best quarterback since that and gives them a pretty solid floor Again, what you lose with Gavin is the ever decreasing hope of him living up to all that potential. But I think even as you wrote late last season, and you've been proven right, and as we've seen during his career, Gavin just was not the guy, and he just did not have the tools to live up to all the hope that everyone put upon him, which looked so promising on his first appearance. I think that's kind of the image in my mind. Like the first thing he does after enrolling early, being so young, thrust in such a tough spot, throws an absolute dime. And then, I mean, really, it might be harsh to say, but it really all went downhill from there.
Yeah, you were looking for hope. You were at that point, the fact he came in early, arrived on campus, like there was some legitimate buzz about his arrival. It was just seen as such a huge recruiting victory for Greg Shannon at the time when he needed something like that. Look, there was a lot that they got out of him, and I disagree that was the high point. I do think that you got to give him some credit for getting to 7 wins, for winning a bowl game. I understand that, like, you can say that they might have won those games in spite of quarterback play at times. Certainly, you look at some of the interceptions he threw last year that took them out of potentially winning some games that might have been program changing. Like, you hope that Kaliakmanis is the guy now who can, get them over that hump, right? To not make those mistakes, to be an accurate passer. They do not expect a Heisman Trophy performer in him. They don't they're not going to get Caleb Williams here. They're not going to get the number 1 pick. They just want above average quarterback play.
Average quarterback play, I think, would be an upgrade. Seriously.
Yeah, okay.
From a passing perspective, I mean. Yeah. Gavin was very clearly a strong, good to above average runner with the ball. And I think he could be even better if he was a little bit more decisive and had a little bit more liberty to, carry the ball on those RPOs and stuff. I think he showed some real burst in the spring game, but I just think to call it below average might even be a compliment. The passing he's had 2 years in a row, he was the least accurate quarterback in FBS football. Like, that's just not going to do it for a Power 5 program, which makes the fact they won 7 games last year, made a bowl game, won a bowl game, that much more impressive. So we got to give credit to Gavin, but we got to say that from a passing perspective, almost anybody. And look, Athan Kaliakmanis was not this very incredibly accurate quarterback either. He was down on the bottom, near the bottom of the rankings as well in adjusted completion percentage and completion percentage. But even then, he still is a significant upgrade from Gavin in that respect. So I think the bar for success with Athan Kaliakmanis is bang average quarterback play. If you get that out of him, you got an upgrade at the position from a passing perspective.
And you mentioned it, but I do want to drive this point home that, a lot of coaches wouldn't have done what Greg Shannon did. And my understanding, you're reporting, so your understanding that this was an exit meeting, leaving campus in spring. And he was just honest with Gavin and said, look, Athan's the starter. If you want to get into the portal, I understand. And that to me speaks to, we joke about it a lot, but he really does practice what he preaches, Greg Schiano. And this is, I think, why, the players trust him on the other side of it, why we're not seeing this march toward the portal for a lot of guys who could leave and could get more money, or certainly be promised things elsewhere that they're not necessarily getting here, why they choose to stay. So it goes both ways. It is worth repeating that.
I agree. And I think it's clear that Greg Schiano sees this as his destination. He views himself building a program long-term. And when you do that, you have to make long-term decisions. The short-term benefit, had he kind of obfuscated this and made this a long-term deal and not told Gavin until he literally cannot leave, would be, yes, you have better quarterback depth for the 2024 season. But the long-term hurt of that is that players would hear Gavin complain about it, obviously, and would see Greg Schiano not live up to his word. Now you see this moment where, yes, you lose a competent backup quarterback, but you gain a lot of trust, a lot of value and belief in the players. And I think you're absolutely right. A big reason that a lot of these guys decided to stay and stick around was because of that, because they trust Greg Schiano, because they believe in him and they know he's a guy who sticks to his word. That carries a lot of value, not just now, but in future recruiting classes when former players can vouch for Greg Schiano, vouch for the program and say, these guys do not lie to you. They speak the truth. And here's a great example of it. They can definitely point to this.
All right. I think we covered everything. What am I missing on this? Any other angles to the situation?
No, I think look, again, we can't emphasize enough the timing of it was the most surprising thing. I
Yep.
think it was very clear throughout the spring that Athan Kaliakmanis was the better quarterback. That kind of followed the projections entering the spring from what we had seen from them last fall. I think Rutgers should get an upgrading quarterback. I think Rutgers, barring any injury, bad luck, should be better offensively because of this. And I'm curious to see where Gavin ends up in following his career because I think there is still a chance that he lives up somewhat to expectations somewhere else, just depending on where he goes, who he plays for, the level, and all that. So, yeah, and look, from our perspective, Gavin has been great to deal with. He's made great strides in dealing with us, and just has
Mhm.
been a little bit more open in talking to us, and feels more comfortable. So, from our end, I think wish him good luck wherever he goes, and looking forward to seeing what he does.
That's all you can say. Absolutely agreed 100%. And not someone who handled a lot of bad situations well. And I hope he finds whatever he's looking for out there in Portlandia. That'd be a good Max TV show, Portlandia.
Sure.
All right. Other news. This was a busy day for you. You thought you were going to go outside and enjoy a nice spring day, but Big Ten released the opponents in basketball for next season. I glanced at it quickly in between getting ready for this podcast, and it looked, about as good as Rutgers could have expected.
That was my takeaway.
Yeah,
I think it's really hard to look at this long term at this point because rosters are so in flux, and you have no idea how good teams will be, the quality of players, and even when you know a roster for the most part, I don't know how Michigan is going to do. On paper, they have a great coach, very talented players, good depth. But how am I supposed to know it's going to come together? Because you have Indiana every year winning the summer sweepstakes and winning all these players, and then they looked
right.
like garbage last year. So you never really know. But from the only real hard thing they got was getting Purdue home and away. Playing at Mackey Arena, even if I'm starting at guard and you're starting at center, would be hard for Rutgers because that place is a house of horrors. But Rutgers avoids a lot of other house of horrors. They don't go to the Breslin Center. They don't go to Williams Arena in Minnesota, which has been just the bane of their existence for years now. They don't go to. I should probably check my story. I had this written, but they avoid a lot of landmines in the schedule.
Pauley Pavilion. I mean, we look at right the USC. I'm disappointed about that one personally, but yeah, I mean they don't go to California.
Yeah, that they also avoid Champaign, which was another one I brought up. They never won there.
Yeah,
They never beat Illinois on the road. But yes, I am disappointed that they. I'm assuming there is one West Coast swing, right? Because
right.
they play
Yeah,
Washington, Oregon. It wouldn't make sense to go there one time in February and then go back another time in January, or flip the months, whatever. You get my point. It would make sense that you do that all in one weekend. That's what my assumption is going to be. And it's a bummer that instead of doing the LA swing, we're doing the Pacific Northwest swing. It is what it is next year. The only issue is that Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey probably will not be around for the trip to LA. Would have been a nice marketing opportunity, but alas.
alas, indeed. Yeah. So there's a lot. I don't know. I get the sense that we have, if we're not quite locked in on what the roster is going to be for basketball, that we're pretty close to it. Like I just don't see a magical answer that we're looking for at center climbing out. I've come to agree with you on the center situation that the centers are likely on this roster now. Yeah, I mean the portal door, the exit at least is closed. I think this is the team.
So really quick on the schedule. The one thing everyone was looking forward to is not happening. Nebraska is not coming to Piscataway, and Gavin Griffiths is not making his triumphant
Ah,
return to Jersey Mike's Arena. That is
that
a
day for
bummer.
Gavin's in New Jersey.
Yes, the RU Screw Pod guys made a great joke 12 months ago. This was Gavin University, four-star Gavin Griffiths in basketball, four-star quarterback Gavin Wimsatt in football, and now 12 months later, both of them were guys who, months prior had said they're not leaving, they're sticking around, and then suddenly they entered the transfer portal. Obviously, different situations, and we can't begrudge either of them for making that decision, but I do think it's a funny parallel with those two. On the roster, the exit door officially closes tonight at midnight. I do not anticipate anybody on the current roster leaving. It would be a major surprise, even more so than Gavin Wimsatt entering the portal if that happened. I think they're going to get a center. I do. I don't think it's going to be a superstar stud center that everyone was hoping for before the portal opened. But look, a guy like Supreme Cook, let's say, I think is probably the ceiling. He's a guy that makes a lot of sense. The Georgetown transfer. He played 3 years at Fairfield under Jay Young, played at Georgetown last year. He's from New Jersey. I think he's a guy that is probably the ceiling for the kind of guy you get, which if you get him, look, good role player, Probably an upgrade over what they have at the current moment. So I think you take that. And if you don't get Supreme Cook, I'm not quite sure who you get. I'd have to peruse the rest of the options in the portal, but you're not. It's going to be a clear downgrade over Cliff Omori, who is the number one center in the portal and going to choose between Alabama or UNC or any other top school that wants him. I think they're going to try to get another sharpshooter. I think you have to. I think we've talked about this enough. I think they will get one because there are a lot of guys in the portal that shoot 35, 36, 37%. But I think if you had gotten Jaden Jones, you'd feel a lot better about things. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to fill out the 13 roster spots. It's just going to be a matter of how long it's going to take, and that could be anywhere between the next 2 weeks to the next month and a half. Who knows? I have no crystal ball, and I'm not going to waste any more time trying to predict it.
That's fair enough. All right, I think that's our emergency pod. Any final thoughts?
Looking forward to training camp. I was looking forward to the battle in training camp, but I guess now I'm looking forward to seeing how Athan Kaliakmanis looks in training camp. And other than that, I'm looking forward to the next few months of kind of quiet because the one major storyline in football has been resolved.
There you go. Just like that. An entire summer of banging the drum on a quarterback competition, which means you guys are going to have to work. What a shame.
Unfortunately. And this does kill one of my storylines. My big question was whether Rutgers was going to follow the Jim Harbaugh model of starting one quarterback week 1, starting one quarterback week 2, and then using the bye week to decide who's going to be the starter. I guess they just kind of decided to go their own way and figure it out early.
They have figured it out. The quarterback competition is over. Gavin Wimsatt in the portal. There you go. I appreciate you guys listening, and we'll be back the next time there's a major crisis to talk about it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.